This is the brand new Active 3.0, which is set to be one of the most impressive pressure washers for the price point given its performance specs. In today's video, we're going to play around with this thing, show you guys what's new because there's a lot changed from the Active 2.3, which on the surface largely looks the same as this, but I promise you there's a lot more than meets the eye. We're going to be putting this through all of our flow testing, our pressure testing, seeing what foam cannons work with it and don't work with it. That's a big thing when it comes to over 3 gallons per minute. There's a lot to dive into today, so welcome back to the channel and let's jump into it. Well guys, I'm super excited to have you guys all here today to check out the new Active 3.0 pressure washer with me. I have not turned this thing on yet. I'm going to give you my first impressions on the noise of this thing, how it sounds, how it feels, all the flow testing, all of that fun stuff and more. Now before we jump into the action, a couple of notes for full transparency right up front here. Active did send this unit out to me completely free of charge to make a review with. Now if you're new to this channel, you'll know I speak my mind. If this thing is junk, I'm going to tell you not to buy it. If this thing's incredible, I'm probably going to tell you to spend your hard-earned money on it. And if there's some constructive feedback or criticisms with this unit, I will be letting Active know. I will also be chapterizing out this video because I like to get into the weeds, get into nerd level 9000 territory. So you guys will be able to skip over the stuff you don't care about, skip directly to the stuff you really do care about. Let's dive into the review here, starting out with specs and pricing. Now, Active claims 3 gallons per minute on this unit at 1000 PSI, pulling 18 amps. Now, this unit launches on March 16th for a retail price of $800, which seems like an unbelievable value given the performance figures. Now, for the first 2 weeks, again, starting on March 16th, you guys can use my affiliate link or code Colton10 to save an additional 10% off your Active 3.0 unit. Now, if you stay to the end of the video, I will give you my full comprehensive review and tell you whether it's actually worth that $800 or whether you should look elsewhere. Now there's some stiff competition for the Active 3.0, but they have the big value option here. So I have the AR635 pressure washer sitting up there on my wall. That unit, essentially the same exact thing on paper, over 3 gallons per minute, 1000 PSI, needing a 20 amp dedicated circuit. But they ask quite a bit more money for that. That retails right at $1,245 for the non-hot water version. I purchased the hot water version, honestly, just because it looks cooler, for nearly $1,400. So at $800, seems like an unbelievable value here. Now, when this first initially launched, I basically thought this was just an Active 2.3, kind of turned up to 11. It looked quite similar, but man, have they changed a lot here. So this features a brand new slow speed induction motor here. So this runs at a rated 1600 RPM. They have a claimed decibel reading at 75 decibels here. We'll talk about sound and noise performance on this. It's always tricky to do decibel readings in a different environment, how close, how far away you are from it. I'll give you all of my initial feelings on that. So along with that new induction motor here, we actually have a brand new Pro 5-piston pump head on here from Active. Now, Active has been known for their 5-piston pump head. That's how they get the efficiency, it's how they get the performance out of their units, and also keep costs down. But this has been redesigned. So on the Active 2.3, the pistons in there were a 10 millimeter piston. This is now 50% larger, bumping up to a 15 millimeter piston. Now they have also treated these pistons with a different material. These are now ceramic coated to not only make them more efficient, but also make them more durable. So all of that combined is how they are getting those unbelievable performance specs. And man, this thing seems like a winner. One of the big things for me as a professional detailer, I've been in the industry for 12 years, a tool like a pressure washer is something I really need to rely on. So having something that is, number one, going to be reliable. Number two, when something inevitably goes wrong, you break down, pistons, seals, whatever, that it needs to be rebuildable. Now they have actually done that here. It's a lot easier to fill oil. You can change all of the internals of this and really make this an actual pro grade unit. And that is the great thing about what Active's lineup actually looks like now. They have their Active 2.0, which is their entry-level pressure washer. Definitely not aimed at somebody like myself, but it retails at $349. You bump up to the 2.3, that retails at $539, getting a little bit more flow, but you are capped at that 15 amp limit, which for some people is actually really, really great. Then you bump up to the Pro grade here, again, $800 here, but you are going to need a dedicated 20 amp circuit on this. So this thing, guys, seems like an unbelievable value. I can't wait to check this out. A couple of things to note here. So it does ship with a oil cap on here that is completely sealed off. Now, very similar to the ARs, the Krenzlas of the world, they actually send you with a vented oil cap on here, so you're not getting crankcase pressure in there. And they also send you all of the tips and orifices. Now, Active, for whatever reason, seems to make their own custom versions of these. So typically nozzles go up in 0.5 increments. So on something like a Krenzla K1322 TS, your nozzle size is going to be a 4.0. It's very important you guys understand all of this, which is why I'm glad they just send all of this directly with you, tell you what you should be using. So this actually utilizes a 6.3 orifice, the AR635 up there uses a 6.5, and then for your foam cannon here, this little tiny guy is a 1.65, which is actually what I found to be the best for the AR635 over here. Now again, they're claiming running it at 18 amps, and one of the questions I had for the guys over at Active, when I saw that initial 18 amps, I was like, oh no, did they actually cap this at 18 amps? And they said no, this is really a 20 amp unit, but they wanted to give you guys some wiggle room. So if your voltage is lower, it's gonna draw a little bit more current. You can play around with, you know, some tip sizes, things like that. I don't think we're gonna be able to put a 1.5 millimeter orifice in a foam cannon, but it is definitely something to note here. And one of the big things that I have found out with my 635, and one of the things we're really gonna cover today, is what type of foam cannons work on this. And that was something I didn't expect. Jumping from my Krenzla to the AR635 was that all of that extra flow on here meant that my foam was watery. I didn't really like the consistency. I had to change foam cannons. I had to change the soaps I was using. So we're gonna see if that's similar here and there's some drawbacks to having that amount of flow, or if they have really optimized this machine. Now, before we jump into all that pressure testing, I wanna quickly show you the 2.3. We'll compare them side by side. Again, some big differences here. So I brought in the Active 2.3 so you guys can see these things side by side. And again, online when I saw the 3.0 launch, I was like, oh, it's just Active 2.3 just turned up to 11. I thought really what they were probably doing with this unit was upgrading the micro switch on it, upgrading, you know, slight bit of electrical needs on it, and just making this a 20 amp machine. And then I unboxed this and was like, wow, they really did a lot here. So it feels like a fully ground up unit. Now there are a few drawbacks to this. Number one, the size of this thing. This is no longer really something you want to set up every time. I personally think this is a unit you really need to wall mount, something similar to how I have my AR635 up here. Active has some great wall mounted options that is kind of all in one, very easily works well with both of these units, but largely they look the same. It's just a brand new version. And again, they're really third generation pressure washer unit here. So up front here on the head, just look at the head size differences here, the induction motors, and again, having that oil cap right on top here, making it easier to change out oil and things like that. But again, you still have your on and off switch right up front here. You've got your M22 14 millimeter thread right here, which typically you're just going to put quick disconnects on. I'll leave those linked in the description below. And here is your water inlet. This is going to be your 3/4 inch garden hose thread. The one other drawback I can see, other than this thing just being a beast, it's heavy, this is my first real drawback with this. This is not a small premium experience and kind of looks terrible. Like, I would not want to put this on my pressure washer wall up here. This is just too beefy, too ugly. Now, this also uses the Winky face plug on this, meaning that it is dedicated 20 amp here, whereas, you know, the 2.3 uses a smaller style GFCI here. And that is one thing that the AR635 does have on it, is that smaller overall brick. That is one thing that I don't love about this. But Nonetheless, I'm super excited to get this thing hooked up. So I'm gonna put on my quick disconnects. We're gonna turn this thing on for the first time. We're gonna get the motor warmed up, get it flowing, and then we'll get into our pressure testing. Time to turn this thing on. Really excited for this. Before I do that though, do want to mention one thing with this. This is a tool only version. So they're not including a bunch of accessories. You're not getting, the active hose here. You're not getting the active gun, all the quick disconnects. And I think that's the right way to go. I think especially a unit at this price point, you should be building your kind of dream setup, if you will. So I've got all this done, got the quick disconnects on. I've got water pressure on the line. Now, always important when you're turning on a machine to let water flow through it to make sure there's no air in the line. But we're hooked up. We've got our 40-degree tip. Again, our 6.3 orifice in here. What do you say we turn it on? So no turnover on the pump whatsoever. I did hear the electrical do some electrical noises, which is kind of similar to the 635. Again, we are pulling a ton of current here. I've got the current gauge on, and let's see how this thing sounds first off. Super quiet. Holy cow. Active. Wow, that is unbelievably quiet. Okay, I believe the 75 decibels now. This is for sure quieter than my 635. I'm curious. Let me say I'm pretty close to this. What do you guys think of the noise? Wow. Guys, I'm really impressed. There is something interesting going on here, so I want to look at this. Currently in the line, there's, about 650 PSI sitting in the line, which is different from how a lot of pressure washers work. The Krenslas, the ARs hold a lot of line pressure, so when you pull it, you get this big burst of water come out, and then it ramps in the machine. This is kind of different, holds less line pressure in it, and then builds it up. So you can see that when I actually, and you can audibly hear it when I pull the trigger. You have a delay, but great off there. I wouldn't say it's bad how this kind of ramps up. It feels pretty normal. I'm curious to see how it recovers here. Pretty darn interesting for sure. So I think next thing here, I want to run you through what PSI this is running, again on their 6.3 orifice, and we'll check our current draw as well. All right, so we've got the gauge on here. You can see the machine is on, holding about 650 PSI of line pressure. I'm also gonna overlay what the current draw is on this. So let's pull this and see how it goes. All right, so you can see right about 950 PSI, and it was pulling right at 17.4-ish amps or so. It did have a big spike there. It was almost 19 amps on the actual unit it was pulling. All right, so we've got their active foam cannon on here. We've got the 1.65 orifice inside. We're not going based on foam right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's pull this, see what it does. So that's only pulling 16 amps. How's the PSI? Only pulling 800-ish PSI. Okay, we got a lot to talk about on the foam cannons. I'm curious to see if this is actually a 1.65 in here. All right, so we're set up with our bucket here. You can see we've got our scale, we've got it zeroed out. So to do our gallons per minute testing, we are going to take our pressure washer gun and exactly for 1 minute, see how much water goes into this. We'll weigh it out. A gallon of water weighs 8.34 gallons. So whatever this number is, we'll divide that by 8.34. That'll give us our overall GPM. Once this hits 10, I'm gonna pull the trigger, run it for exactly 1 minute. So it looks like we ended up at 24.86 pounds. So if we take 24.86 pounds, divide that by 8.34, that gives us a GPM of 2.98 gallons per minute. Not quite 3.0, but also still very, very impressive. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to quickly run it with a 6.5 orifice just to see what it does, and I can compare those numbers to the AR635 using the same orifice. I would probably recommend, though, you should still use the 6.3 just based on PSI. And honestly, I wasn't seeing right at 1,000 PSI. It does still feel like pretty good pressure there, though. All right, guys, here is the AR635 6.5 orifice. And the interesting thing is it's running about 50 more PSI and actually running a little bit more current, which is opposite of what this should do. This should actually pull less current and give more flow. So let's do a quick test because somebody is not telling the truth about their orifice size. Yeah, we're running right at 950 PSI and also pulling 17.67 amps. And we leveled out at 17.45 amps with the active 6.3, which doesn't make any sort of sense at all. Guys, I gotta tell you what, this machine sounds really, really, really nice. I'm very impressed by it. And there is a lot of water flowing through here. Boom. Right on the dot. So take this out and we'll do our calculation. So if we take 25.04 pounds divided by 8.34, that gives us 3.002 gallons per minute. Now again, the weird thing is here, this makes sense that you're getting a slight bit more flow. I don't understand though how I'm actually getting more pressure, about 50 PSI more on the AR635 6.5 tip, but that's pretty darn interesting. The next important thing, and this is where things get really interesting, is when we talk foam cannons. So in the active already, I have put in a 1.65 orifice. Now they make their own orifice, and this is actually one out of an MJJC. You can see it says 1.65. Now you can see the opening in there. Sorry, it's hard to focus. It's actually quite large. So the active 2.3 used to use this typically, a 1.45, which is smaller, as you can see right there. And then something like, you know, most foam cannons, most pressure washers are using these, a 1.25 option. Now the AR635 called for a 1.7. We'll try that out. We're gonna try a 1.65, and we're also gonna try a 1.5. What I saw so far from that foam cannon with the active 165 in it was not promising, I'll tell you that. And that comes into a big topic talking about foam cannons with super high flow pressure washers. What concerns me here is how a foam cannon works, of course, is you have water rushing through here. Your orifice goes in the back of these, inside of those plugs there, you can see it. And what it does is actually create a Venturi effect. That Venturi effect essentially sucks up your solution through your dip tube and creates your snow foam through a bunch of different filters and things out here. Now, part of the problem with the AR635 that we've been finding is that it is running at such low PSI that it's creating very watery foam. And in fact, on a 1.7 millimeter orifice, which would be right here, with the active foam cannon on my AR635, it was actually putting solution into the bottle. So I'm curious to see how we're going to find all of this to work. Now, the only thing I've been able to get to work on my 635 that is good is, number one, changing the soap. So going to a higher concentration soap, something like DIY Incredible Suds Type 2 here. I am using 3 ounces in a foam cannon. If you guys know this product, a typical foam cannon, 1 to 1.5 ounces is plenty of foam. So that is one of the drawbacks of these super high flow machines, is that you are going to blow through more solution in general, and you have to use a lot more solution. So again, super concentrated soap. I'm curious to see what this is going to look like. Now we have a couple of different foam cannons here to use. So we've got a Rain Kovo foam cannon. We've got the MJJC Pro V3. We've got the MTM PF22 here. We've got the active foam cannon, the ADS foam cannon, and the Griot's foam cannon. Now this one actually has these little metering tips on it. What I have found works the 635 here is a 1.65 orifice, just as active sends. Again, I'm curious to see, we can do current testing on that, and well as foaming down a car to see if it's actually 1.65, but I use this without a metering tip. So I'm curious to see how these foam cannons work. So let's get this all set up. It's gonna take a little bit of time. Promise you, this is a big deal. Okay, so we're gonna start out again with the active foam cannon with their 1.65 orifice. We'll also try the 1.65. We'll try a 1.5 on this to see if it works. So, as I pull this, it's right at 15.85, creeping up a little bit, 15.9 amps on there. And the foam, a little watery. So let me swap in the MJJC 165 and let's see what it pulls. All right, so we've got the MJJC 1.65 in here. So let's see what the current draw is. 19.5 amps. So that tells me right there, guys, active is not giving you an actual 1.65, probably more like a 1.7. Okay, so again, same thing with the nozzles here. This is something that active consistently does, and I cannot comprehend why they do this. So again, they claim this is a 1.65 orifice. You can see it right there on the side. This MJJC 1.65 is pulling 400 PSI more, which in fact is going to give us better foam for our Venturi effect. Again, this is just, it gets into absolute confusion when you get into these high flow pressure washers. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I can definitely tell a difference in that active one on the right. That seems like a much bigger orifice. If I were to guess, that's got to be a 1.7, maybe 1.75, potentially a 1.8. I mean, it is pulling 4 amps less on this versus this. And again, 400 PSI different. Now, again, the big thing with this unit, this is a 20 amp machine. So it should be able to pull that, as well as your electrical should be able to pull that. Not a problem at all. So that is really interesting. I just don't understand why they label something a 165, and this is also a 165 that is actually measured out correctly, and they are completely different and give completely different results. So we have 910 milliliters of water. We have 90 milliliters of snow foam. That is exactly 3 ounces. 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. So it'll be 3 ounces per 1,000 in a foam cannon here. So we're going to go through each individual foam cannon here. Hopefully it's quick for you guys. It takes me a bit of time to unscrew all these, put the orifice in, yada, yada, yada. So let's get this test going. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't. All right, guys, starting off here with the active foam cannon with their 1.65 orifice. Again, remember, I don't truly think this is actually a 165, pulling way less current. I think we're going to be in for some runny snow foam. Yeah, absolute garbage snow foam there. You can see how wet, how watery it is, zero cling to it. And that is one of the big things with these 3.0 pressure washers. We are just not running enough PSI through this, especially with this orifice. Again, only 800 PSI here. So let me switch over to the MJJC 165, and I think we'll see quite a bit better snow foam. By the way, this has been on here for maybe all of 45 seconds, and you can see it is just super watery. Now, I will say with snow foam, I am not the guy who has to have the biggest, thickest snow foam out there, but this is just well too far on the side of watery for my liking. Yeah, again, pretty darn wild here. Next up, sticking again with the active foam cannon, we've got the MJJC 1.65 orifice in here. Let's see some difference. So you guys can clearly see it's better. We've got more PSI, but again, still quite a runny snow foam. But I also think anybody coming from another pressure washer unit, something like a Krenza, even an active 2.0, 2.3 had decent foam on it. This is kind of miserable with a Incredible Suds Type 2 with 3 ounces in it, remember. So I think this is very similar to the AR635, where foam cannon actually plays an incredible role in getting this whole Venturi effect going, creating rich, thick snow foam. You can see that is pretty much already dripping off the surface. Definitely not big, thick snow foam. Now, one thing that is great with the high flow machine rinsability is incredible. That's the biggest benefit to this, but again, the foam cannon aspect, pretty interesting. Moving on now to, I would say, one of the most popular foam cannons in the entire detailing industry, the MTM PF22, and this is their wide mouth variant. Now again, we're running MJJC 165 in basically all of these because I don't think the 165 from Active actually is reasonable, and I don't think it's actually cut properly. So let's see how this does. Okay, so off the bat here, I think you can clearly see from the Active foam cannon, which is hilarious that this is actually working better on their own unit. It's a little bit thicker. Now this is by no means super thick snow foam. This is still on the runny side. Again, this is part of the problem with these big boy machines is you have 3 gallons per minute going through there. You are naturally using a ton of water, diluting things down. For those of you who like using Bilt Hamber touchless, you are going to blow through a metric load. I could have said it there, right? But you are going to go through a ton of solution to get that 2%, 1% panel impact ratio. This is borderline on the edge of what I consider okay. I'd like it to be a little bit thicker, but this is decently reasonable. But again, I think a lot of people coming from wanting really thick snow foam, this machine is really not going to be for you. So that's the MTM PF22. I think this is reasonable, but I think we can still get a little bit better. All right, another crowd favorite here, the Armor Detail Supply Drift Foam Cannon. This is largely based off the MTM PF22 wide mouth, but honestly, a way better price point on this, better internals in this, and has some great features. But let's see how this does, because this did not work very well with my 635. Okay, interesting. So right off the bat here, I think this is the quote-unquote driest snow foam we have. You can see the dimpling here instead of just a big sheet. You can audibly hear how this is really aerating a lot of that snow foam. This is really, really good snow foam on here, and actually quite impressive, I will say. So you're getting a lot of good cling time on this. This is still gonna run off the surface. You're gonna have, you know, a good amount of snow foam on there. I think this is reasonable. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Probably some of you are gonna say, man, it's just too runny for my liking. Again, this is pretty much perfect to how I like my snow foam. Very good job here by the Armor Detail Supply Drift Foam Cannon. All right, guys, next up here, we've got the Rainco Vo, and this is very similar to an MJJC foam cannon, just a lot cheaper. You can pick these up on Amazon for like sub 40 bucks, I think. Actually pretty decent foam cannons, especially on lower flow machines. These actually work quite well. So again, 165 from MJJC in here. Let's see how this does. Honestly, not bad. That's pretty decent. Definitely not quite as thick as the Armor Drift foam cannon there. You can see how the dimples go away quite quickly and then it starts running off the panel. Again, the funny thing here is pretty much every other foam cannon we've tried, the Active is by far the worst foam cannon for this unit. And I kind of think they might need to come up with a new foam cannon to go with their new pressure washer. And the funny thing is, like, AR did exactly the same thing. They're like, hey, here's all of our new units, but we don't have a foam cannon that works for it. And apparently they figured out one. So I'd be curious to see how that's going to work once that's on sale. I was supposed to get a demo unit, haven't received it yet, but you can see it's coating the vehicle nice. It is still a little bit on the runnier side. Again, up to you guys. Do you think this is reasonable? This is kind of borderline for me. I think I prefer the Armor Drift foam cannon. Let's go over to an actual MJJC, the Pro V3. Next on the table, an MJJC Pro V3. Now again, 165 orifice from MJJC here. These are regarded, a lot of people regard these as some of the best snow foam out there. I have seen actually exactly the opposite. Let's see how this looks. Nice, right? This is fully cranked down. There is, I mean, you know, we can crank this the other way if you'd like me to. And it's just straight water. Guys, this is part of the problem with these big high flow pressure washers is some foam cannons work okay, some work terribly. Like, this is embarrassing. imagine you've got 3 Pro V3s. You just buy a brand new Active 3.0. You get all the orifices and you get that as snow foam. That is a big problem here. So last foam cannon here with the Active 3.0, the Griot's Garage Boss foam cannon. Again, this is the foam cannon I found to work best with my AR635, 1.65 MJJC orifice inside, no metering tip. Big shout out to my friend Ryan from Fine Detailing. He actually was using this with his AR635 when I was scrambling, having issues with mine. And he said, dude, got to order the Griot's. It's worked great for me. So let's try this on here. Let's see what this does. I'm hoping for some good snow foam. What do you guys think? I wouldn't say it's actually the best on the Active 3.0 here. I would say it's still a little on the watery side. Honestly, thinking back, I think the ADS foam cannon has some of the best dimples in there, the thickest, richest snow foam. But man, that's pretty enticing. The Rain Kovo was also good. Pretty interesting. You can see how those dimples goes away. It starts running. I don't know, guys. This is pretty darn interesting. So I'm going to rinse this off here. I'm going to switch the AR635 out. We'll do it again with the Griot's Boss foam cannon here, and we'll see if there's any sort of difference between them. All right, I'm going to rinse this down here with the AR635. Already did a little test. I can tell you way louder than the Active 3.0 here. Hope you guys can hear that, but yeah, big difference in loudness. I honestly, Active 3.0 sounds freaking awesome to me. So over here, we've got our Griot's foam cannon, exactly the same as we just had it. We'll take off pressure washer tip here. Just keep it running for you guys. Boom, locked on, same exact solution. Let's see on the 635. It seems a little drier on this. I don't know why, but I can audibly hear it. It just, yeah, it's really interesting. So again, this is what I found to be the best on the 635. I really don't know if this is actually the best foam cannon for the Active 3.0. Again, you've got very thick snow foam on here, but it's still watery, still a little runny. So yeah, really interesting takeaways from all of this. But I think I've got enough information now to kind of wrap this video up, tell you whether you should or shouldn't buy the Active 3.0, considering its value and performance. It's not even close to as loud as the 635. That, I think, is the biggest surprise here for me. So I'll continue rinsing this thing down. Let's finish this video off. I got to be totally honest, I didn't really expect to like this machine, and really honestly love this machine as much as I really do. Now, I guess the big elephant in the room, would you recommend a AR635 or the Active 3.0? Guys, I gotta be totally honest with you, I am kicking myself for spending $1,400 on that machine that on paper is basically identical to this, is actually louder than this, and just in general, I'm blown away with this thing. The ability to still be able to service this, just like the AR, have a great customer support, I think is really impressive. And I am blown away that Active went from the 2.0 to the 2.3 and then a huge monumental step to this 3.0 here. Now, I do think this pressure washer, you need to consider if this is something you actually want to get into. Again, with these big high flow machines, there are drawbacks to it. We just spent a ton of time going through talking about the snow foam. It's not going to be as thick and rich as you might be used to. You're also going to use a whole heck of a lot more solution. You might need to change the foam cannon you're using. You're going to need to get a 1.65 orifice from MJJC. And I just have to say this, I truly don't know how Active sent out that 1.65 and expected people to use it in their Active foam cannon and have okay soap. Like it was just terrible. Like, how do you not test that? Like, something is not adding up to me there. And again, they're pulling way less amps than it really should, which to me says that orifice is bigger. So highly recommend, if you get one of these units, immediately purchase the MJJC 1.65 millimeter orifice. I'll leave that linked in the description below. And again, you might have to switch up some soaps. I found DIY Detail Incredible Suds Type 2 works the best with these high flow machines, at least that I've tested so far. There's some other heavily concentrated soaps. A lot of car shampoos out there that you purchase have a ton of water in them, so they aren't that concentrated. But I think long gone are the days of using an ounce, ounce and a half, maybe even up to 2 ounces in a foam cannon. You're gonna have to bump that up. Do I recommend using more than 3? I personally don't. I think then we're just getting at a ridiculous point, and I think the benefits don't outweigh the cost here. The other couple of considerations here with this machine, please understand you need a dedicated 20 amp circuit for this. If you're coming from an Active 2.3, you've got a traditional garage that's got 15 amp service inside there, probably shared with a bunch of different plugs. This will not work with it. You need its own dedicated plug that can run 20 amps on it. So I think that's a big consideration. The last thing, which we have not talked about, DI water. These high flow machines do not work with something like the CR Spotless under pressure. Now there is a workaround for this, and that is because the CR Spotless or something similar to this is maximum of 2.5 gallons per minute flow. So especially if you live somewhere like Scottsdale, you live somewhere like Florida, you have horrible water, you're probably not even gonna get to 2.5 gallons of flow, and you're gonna starve these machines and you're gonna burn them out. Now what you can actually do is turn the unit off, still keep water flowing through your gun. And I wanna give a big shout out to my friend Cars with Keeve, great content creator here on YouTube in the detailing space. This is the Keeve nozzle. This is essentially a shower head nozzle, and you can use DI water to rinse your car down. This works pretty darn well. It's not as convenient as rinsing it with pressure. I do understand that, but it is a workaround, and that's what I've been using on my AR635. So guys, this is the Active 3.0. I think if it fits within your means, fits within your budget, the price on this is exceptional, by the way. Again, you just go to even the AR630, 2.3 gallons per minute, still needs a 20 amp dedicated circuit. You're spending $945 for that. You're spending over or close to $1,300 for that. So I think this is an absolute steal, enough for you to essentially purchase this unit, buy a foam cannon, buy a gun, buy a hose, and potentially even a hose reel, and have exactly what you need for the price of that. And honestly, I really wish I would have waited. It might be to the case of, I might throw this thing up on the wall and never put the AR back up. So big shout out to Active. You guys did a phenomenal job with this. Please figure out what is going on with your foam cannon orifices. But overall, guys, really thrilled with this unit. And also remember, for the first 2 weeks, starting on March 16th, you can get 10% off using code Colton10 at checkout for your Active 3.0. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in another one soon. Bye-bye.